Welcome to Elevate, the podcast where we dissect exceptional achievers who are consistently raising the bar personally and professionally to produce extraordinary results in investment real estate and ultimately in their lives. Now here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I'm so blessed and grateful to be sitting here with my friend Pancham Gupta. Pancham, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Tyler.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's been a lot of fun to just catch up with you right before we got on the show, and I have no doubt this is going to be a show where we serve some people, and so I really want to thank you for being on the show. But before we do that, I want to welcome Elevate Nation back because it is time to take it to another level. I know I say that each and every time, but that's really our goal here, is to raise the bar. And this is the show where we identify and apply how the best of the best raise the bar personally and professionally to achieve greatness in real estate and beyond. And I have to remind you that this is a masterclass for leaders and those looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes through real estate investing and ultimately in their lives. Ultimately, this is all about, combining personal development, personal growth, professional development, real estate investing to elevate to a life without limits, because really that's what it's all about. This is what we just talked about, is so you can make any decision, so you can choose to be wherever you are, so you can, really craft the life of your dreams. And that's why we created this show. And if you appreciate what we're doing, we would appreciate 100% if you went on and gave us a subscription. That way you get notified when our next show comes out, as well as, give us a rating. If you're so inclined to give us a 5-star review, we certainly would appreciate that. And a review as well is certainly helpful because it helps us reach more people. And our goal is to reach millions and millions of people with this message. And with that said, I want to go ahead and dive in here with Pancham. And I want to tell you a little bit about him first. Pancham is the host of the Gold Collar Investor podcast, which helps high-paid professionals learn about investing outside of Wall Street and learn about personal finance. He is also the principal of Mesos Capital. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
Excellent. Perfect. Pancham has a master's in information networking and computer science from Carnegie Mellon University. And he also manages and controls over $32 million in real estate, which I know is growing, as we just talked before the show here, and gave me a little bit of insight there. So excited about that, excited to dive into a very sharp real estate mind. He has bought and invested in properties in 5 different states and internationally. Pancham is great at finding value propositions and has successfully built a portfolio which is cash flowing in double digits. And he also spent 14 years in the fintech industry in the greatest city in the world, New York City. So with that said, Pancham, we love learning about folks through the bios. And of course, yours is extremely impressive. Tell us more about Pancham behind the bio.
Pancham behind the bio. Pancham behind the bio came to the United States in 2003 to get his master's degree with the idea of, working here in the US for couple of years and then going back to India, where I'm from originally, and doing something of my own. And back in 2009, when me and my wife, we sold pretty much all of our furniture to move back, we realized that we were expecting our first baby.
Wow.
And we decided, let's buy the furniture back. It's hard to move cities, let alone countries during this time. So why not, let's buy everything back. And as the history will hold, we never moved back. We decided in 2011 that we're going to stay here. And in 2012, I started investing in real estate and, as a hobby on the side, as a passive investment strategy, and slowly became addiction of mine, spending all my nights, weekends on this stuff. And then slowly, at some point, it transitioned into passion, and I don't even know when that happened. And and realized that I want to scale this up. Started learning about syndications, and did our first one, then the second one, third one, fourth one. So, and finally, I quit my job last year. And July 4th, believe it or not, was my first day, which is the Independence Day, without a W-2. So
that's amazing. So would you say that, I mean, your experience, actually, I want to know a little bit about the thought process behind potentially you were going to go back home and then all
Hmm.
of a sudden you learned you were going to have a child. What was the distinction there in no longer going back home and staying here? I'm just curious from that standpoint.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. No one actually asked me ever that question, so you're putting me on spot, but it's great. We have when we were expecting our firstborn, we were thinking, you know what, it's better that we are already settled here. When we move, it's going to be a lot of variables. And from the health point of view, let's just stay here and have the firstborn, and then we'll decide. So that was the thing. That's where we left it off. But when the first baby was born, and we started seeing the opportunities here, what this country had to offer, and all the lifestyle that we were getting used to with the newborn, we felt that might be, we might rethink that plan. And
Hmm.
I was also constantly chatting with my parents there. It was not a decision that was made in a silo. It was after talking to everyone and really making sure that we are creating a best life possible for our kids and for ourselves. And that's when we decided, you know what, we'll stay here and start investing in this country and make this our home.
So fast forwarding 3 years from then, you started investing in real estate which then at some point transitioned into a passion, which you seems like aren't really able to trace kind of when that happened. So the reason why I asked that question is because, there's always these circumstances that occur in people's lives that, make it feel like, wow, we've got so many things going on and man, we just threw another wrench into the pile here and I just don't know what to do. But I always have this feeling, and you never really have it in the moment and in those moments of chaos when it just seems like, wow, all of our plans are flipped upside down. But this
Right.
happened for you and not to you to make this decision that really kind of puts you on the path towards passion. And I just think it's a beautiful thing. And it's a great reminder for all of us to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm busy, and then something crazy happened out of left field. But you know what? There's a secret here and there's a reason why this is happening. So I just think it's a great reminder.
Yeah, no, I always say that all of these things are serendipitous in a way. Me quitting my job last year, it wasn't easy, but I did it. And I had to go through some mindset struggles around
Hmm.
that too, to kind of do that. But am I happy about doing that? Absolutely. What's my biggest regret? I should have done it sooner,
Wow.
So,
So tell me
so
about that mindset work that you had to do to get to the point of making the decision to, you know, quit probably what was feeling like certainty for your family, certainty of a paycheck every couple of weeks. I mean, what mindset cultivation did you have to go through to get to that point to make that decision?
No, absolutely. So great question again. So, I'll preface this with a little bit of background that I read this book by Robert Kiyosaki, Cash Flow Quadrant, where he really clearly lays out what's the difference between an employee, self-employed person, business owner, and an investor. And that stuck with me for a very long time, and I read that book multiple times, and I say that book changed my life. So I was always in this mindset of starting something of my own. And when I got passionate about real estate, i uh, I had this extremely high paying job on this, which I was doing, which was my bread and butter. It was extremely hard for me to quit. It was like golden handcuffs, right? You're getting this constant paycheck. And, I was talking about quitting with my wife, with my family. They were all against me quitting
Hmm.
because everyone was saying, what if it doesn't work out? What about the benefits? What about this high salary? You're not getting that much, in the passive income. It's not even close, remotely close. So what about this? What about that? And I'm like, you all are talking about what if it doesn't work. And I always said, what if it does? I want to give myself that opportunity, that at least a chance, and not have that regret later that I didn't do it. But still, it was very hard for me. So I actually hired a mindset coach to help me quit. My first conversation with that coach was, I'm hiring you to help me quit. And when I went with this idea to my wife, it's a funny story. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hire a coach to help me quit. She's like, what? I'm like, to help me quit. So you want to hire a coach to help you quit, and you want to pay someone to help you quit, and how not to make money. I said, just go ahead and quit your job. You don't have to hire someone. But it was very hard. It's not easy, as it seems like. So I had to go through that mindset, and it's all about mindset at the end of the day, right? It's the decision that you make. It's we tell ourselves the circumstances and all the things that are happening around you are causing you to make a decision, but I think it's the decision you make. Like you said, life is happening
Mm-hmm.
for you, not to you, and you have to really decide. I don't know
Well,
if that answered your question.
yeah, it does. It absolutely does. And, many of our listeners know that I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. And of course, what I mentioned there earlier was all about Tony Robbins. And one of the things he also says is decisions are what shape your destiny. What you're
Exactly.
talking about is making a decision. And you knew it was very important. And your family was really trying to, protect themselves. They're trying to protect you as well with these. And, when you make these decisions that are out of the ordinary, it feels very dangerous. It feels like,
Very.
wow, the lion on the savannah is going to chase me and it's going to eat me if I do this. But I do think it's really important to realize that where focus goes, energy flows as well. If you're saying, well,
Exactly.
what if you succeed? What about that? And if I focus on that, that's when the good things happen. And so I thought that was a great distinction that you brought up there. But Pancham, I wanted to ask you also, I was just curious. I mean, was there a moment in your life, was it the time that you felt like you had those golden handcuffs perhaps, or was this before, maybe when you were growing up, that you decided that you wanted to live an uncommon life? Or was that not until you read a book like The Cash Flow Quadrant? Or, was there a moment in your life where you kind of flipped the script or the switch in your mind that said, you know what, I'm going to live, to the highest level?
No, when I was growing up, I always wanted to start something on my own, and that's when I came. When I came here, my goal was to go back and start something of my own back home. So I was always of the mindset that I want to do something like that, and it's just that when I was here, and being a first generation immigrant in this country, it was, especially if you're from India or China, there is a struggle of getting permanent residency or citizenship, and I had to work for many years to actually get that, and I couldn't do anything during those years. At least I was telling myself. I know people who do that
Mm,
even then. It's all about the mindset again. So
yeah.
I was telling myself that. And when I decided to stay in this country, I decided that, there will be a point in time where I would want to do something of my own. I actually started 2 startups before 2012, where I lost a bunch of money, but I learned quite a bit you know, to see if I can make them successful, or do something on my own.
Are you someone who is looking to seriously elevate your life this year? I mean, now, this year, 2020, because I want to let you know that I am currently opening up a few coaching spots for people like you who want to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be. And I want to invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com. Again, that's coachwithtyler.com. I have to tell you, this is not for everyone. This is only for those who are defiantly committed, those who are decisive, those who are coachable, those who are resourceful. They're willing to do whatever it takes. They're willing to sacrifice time, energy, and invest resources into themselves to get to where they want to be, to live life at the highest level, and to elevate to a life without limits, exactly what we talk about on this show. If that is you, I invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com. Again, that's coachwithtyler.com. I just think it's really interesting what you said is during that time that you were seeking your citizenship. And obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done towards that and a lot of continued persistence there. And obviously you're somebody who knows a lot more about that than I do. But it is really interesting, not even just in that type of circumstance. There's so many different life scenarios that people say, well, I can't really do that right now because I've got X, Y, and Z. And it is all about giving yourself permission to
Exactly.
succeed and to be who you say you want to be, and step beyond that fear, step out of that comfort level, out of that comfort zone, and beyond your comfort level. So I really think that's really, really interesting. But, with that said, I wanted to fast forward to today.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to talk to you today, now that you have, you've taken those leaps of faith and things are paying off for you tremendously. Obviously, you've got a great podcast, and then building a substantial portfolio with the assistance, obviously, of your valued investors. And I'd be curious to know, one of the things that we talk about here on Elevate is, obviously the things that we've been talking about so far in terms of personal growth, personal development. But beyond that, it's building practical solutions in your life as it relates to real estate. And I'd be curious to know, what's a very significant way that you've really raised the bar in your own business to elevate your own results?
I would say what I've done is I'm trying to create some tiny habits around that I'm doing daily. Like, for example, I've come to realize that after doing Savers, the Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, he
Mm-hmm.
talks about SAVERs, or 6 things that you do in the morning. So I'm trying to get into a rhythm of doing that very religiously in the morning, and I've seen that my productivity has gone up. Right. So I try to do that. And then from the business point of view, what we are trying to do, me and my partner, we are trying to set processes
Mm-hmm.
around small little things. Right now there are a lot of things that we were doing manually, so to speak. Now we are trying to automate that, either by seeking external help, hiring employees or virtual assistants, or investing in software to do certain functions that could be done without our involvement. So we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to create those processes around different functions of our business, and that's where we are right now. So that's what we're trying to do to elevate the business side of things. And on personal side, I'm trying to obviously keep reading books,
Mm-hmm.
which I do as part of the savers thing, and also keep religiously doing this.
Can you give us just a very high level regarding Savers, that, for folks who have not read that book?
Sure. So SAVERS it's an acronym that Hal, who's the author of Miracle Morning book, created. S stands for silence, which is meditation. A stands for affirmations. V stands for visualization. E stands for exercise. R stands for reading. And S in the end stands for scribing. So what he is saying, that if you do all of these 6 things, like he talked about all the successful people that he has seen in his life, what routine they were doing, or what thing they were following, and he jotted down every single thing. And these were the 6 things that were common across different people. Not everyone was doing all of these 6, so he kind of created this acronym and for all these 6 things, and he started doing all of these 6 things, and he saw how his life changed. And since then he wrote a book, and it changed many lives. So that's what this routine is. And he says that you can do 5 minutes each, or 10 minutes each, or whatever works for you. But if you do them religiously for 30 days, he says, continuously, you will start to see the impact.
I love it. And we will definitely put a link in the show notes to the Miracle Morning, because, it's one of these trends that you see for most high performers, is that there's a very specific morning routine, a morning regimen. And I love just the acronym there of SAVERS. Believe it or not, I've actually never read the book. I'm a huge reader myself. I am very familiar with it, but I love that. And I really appreciate you diving in to the details there. And as it relates, actually, one other thing I wanted to make a mention of before I ask about the processes is I love how I ask about what's a way that you've raised the bar in your business, and you tell me about, habits that you're creating personally. And that's the reason why we have this show, is because your personal growth supports the business growth, which then is a vehicle towards creating what you want in your life. And I think a lot of people forget that. A lot of people leave college, as an example, and say, you know what, I'm never going to read a book again because, I don't have any more homework. And I just think you're really missing out if that's the case. So I really wanted to highlight that. And as it relates to processes, just curious, what's one process right now that, like one book that many of our guests talk about frequently is The One Thing by Gary Keller. What's the one thing you could do that makes
Mm-hmm.
everything else either irrelevant or unnecessary? What's one process that you have really implemented recently in your business that you think has given you a significant domino effect?
Sure. Actually, it's happening as we speak. So we invested in investor management relationship software where people, all of our investors can now go in, just like they have their 401k, you can log in and see, or your Fidelity account or whatever. They can log in and see all the deals that they have invested with us. They can see the returns. They can see, they can get the K1s from that software. They can get all the documents that are relevant to their investment from that. And also, if we have a new deal coming up, uh, it will help us in the raise as well to track all of that. So before we had this, and we're implementing it as we speak, but before we had this, we had to do some of this very manually.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of time that we were spending per investor average, we are hoping to reduce it to very, very minimal after this is fully implemented. So this is one thing, that one area of our business, which is investor management and communication, we are trying to streamline that and see how that would go. And then the second would be the deal flow. We have not done a lot towards that, but that would be the next thing that we would attack after this is fully done.
I love it. And it's a great reminder that we always have to think about, well, what's our highest priority right now, right? People are
Yeah.
always talking, how can I fit everything in one day? And really it's probably unlikely that we overhaul all of our processes as well as service our current business and future business in one day. But of course there's pressure points that are more important and more applicable now than later. And so I just think it's a great reminder, and I appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to talk more about yourself and just how you make some decisions. One thing I was curious to know, Pancham, obviously you said no to the continued high-paying career that you declined there after really kind of evolving your mindset and giving yourself permission. But I'm curious to know now, as someone who is really building a substantial business, what are you saying no to? And then also how? I mean, this is really, it's always a personal question for me because I want to know how to get better at this. And I know many of our listeners do as well.
It's a very hard thing to do. It's very personality dependent thing too. So for me, I always try to help out people and all that. And I was, one thing I was realized, to back up a second, I was a yes man, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if some people would come to me, anyone comes to me for help, I would listen, I would try to help, and I still want to do that. But that was a time sink for me, right? So one thing that I'm doing to kind of getting better at saying no to the things that I feel would either I would fail to deliver up to their expectations, or if I'm overcommitting to myself, and I fail in some other parts of the business because I'm doing this other thing which I was not planning on doing. So I'm still trying to get better at this, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to say no to things which either are not adding value, where I feel that I cannot add value to, or I feel it's not helping the business in any way. So
So
it's very hard to do
one
thing.
of the things that really strikes me about you is you're such a kind person. And I wanted to look behind the curtain there on that. If someone asked you, and I just some generic, thought that really didn't serve your business, I mean, how would you respond to that and decline that type of an opportunity?
So it depends. Is it a 5 minute thing, or is it like a 2 hour thing? Or
Say it's an hour thing. It's
so
an
if
hour
it's
commitment.
so if it's an hour commitment, I would say that I would send them my calendar link to have them schedule. I've blocked certain period of time where I talk to potential investors or people who have questions about the show, about anything that I'm doing. So
Mm-hmm.
I would send them that link and say, you know what, I appreciate you reaching out, and I definitely want to help you. Let's have a conversation. Here's my calendar link. You can schedule a call, and I'll do that. And I still do it. And Wednesday is that day for me. And this Wednesday, I had like 9 phone calls. Some of them were bad.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's always just interesting. And I guess really the takeaway somewhat is that you can create systems and perhaps even batch your time or pre-schedule time for things that may or may not service your business. I think one of the tough things about real estate, and we even talked about this before the show, is that you can't really systematize everything, which
Right.
is, it's a tough thing, but it's also an insulator in terms of disruption from technology because of the nature of the fact that it is all about relationships. So I do think it's very, very interesting. And I appreciate you sharing that. We did talk a little bit about your habits, obviously, as it relates to your morning routine. What other habits have been very important for you that you've kind of created maybe over the past few years?
So I'm trying to, second thing that I'm really working hard is time blocking, which is what they talk about in one thing. And, so I've categorized my time into 3 different categories. Like one is the time where I'm doing little things which is taking a lot of my time. For example, I do a podcast. Before, I was editing my own shows. So instead of, I can hire that help for $40 an hour or whatever amount, and they will probably do much better job than what I would do. So I need to hire help to do those things. So uh, and then the second level is where I'm really creating uh, high value items, where either I'm talking to investors or brokers about the new deal and all that, where it's helping the business, high ROI items, right? And then the third thing is the gold time, which I call which is either going to the gym, going to ski with my kids, or doing things which you cannot really put any value on. They're like lifetime activities. So I'm trying to get better at time blocking. I struggle, like there are a lot of distractions. You go on Facebook, 20 minutes go away, you don't even know it. So I'm trying to make sure that I time block and certain activities. So if I'm writing, let's say, investor update, so that 1 hour is for that. I'm not going to check my emails. I'm not going to check my texts. I'm not going to go on Facebook. Nothing. I'm just focused on that one activity. And it's so hard to do.
I know.
So hard to do. So
how much time do you allot to each of those categories, just out of curiosity?
So I have many categories, like for example, podcasts. Within podcasts, it's thinking about new topics, or scheduling, or then on my business side, we have the deal related things, which is talking to the brokers and the attorneys and all that. And then you have talking to the investors. So each and every item, the least granular I go is half an hour, right? And then the max is 2 hours. Like after 2 hours for me, like it goes, I start becoming unproductive. I mean, put it that way.
I think you and I both know this comment, and I think it's a funny comment, but they say the mind can only endure what the butt can endure, right? So it's maybe that's the theory there. That's the rule of thumb in how you time block. So I do think it's very interesting. One of the things also, maybe I'll stack on that just slightly, is if you can take a little bit of breaks, if you're doing some deep work, and maybe you need a 5 or 10 minute breathing break, or you need to get up and kind of walk around and move around. I do think that's really important to just give yourself some more, your physicality, your physiology, you can bring that back into your work and be more effective there, because, at a certain point you kind of, your mind gets depleted of oxygen, and, your blood flow is slowing down. So it's really interesting. And I think many people forget about that too often. And so just want to make a mention of that. Curious to know. Oh, did you have something else you were going to say on that?
No, I was about to say that I have one mentor of mine, and he's a great at time blocking. And he's told me that when he's time blocking, he's told his wife that unless the house is burning down or there is a medical emergency, do not call me or come, like, even open the door.
Yep.
So imagine that kind of sensitivity around time blocking. I'm not there. I'm actually far from it. So this is my goal, to get to that point where like I'm so focused, so in the moment that nothing will distract me.
I
Right.
know.
So
I'm trying to grow towards that as well.
it's
And
it's very hard.
it's amazing though when you when you do have those bursts of energy and focus, what you can accomplish,
Right.
because multitasking is truly a myth. And as you mentioned, if you get distracted by social media, it takes, you can say that, hey, now I'm actually working on this task, but your mind hasn't yet switched. And it really takes so much time for your mind to get refocused. And I forget what
Right.
the stats are. You may know better than I, but it takes a certain amount of minutes before your mind can be refocused on a different task.
Yeah, I don't know the number, but yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Tell me about an investment that you've made in yourself that's really paid big dividends.
Oh my God. I've, in the last 5 years, I've invested in myself more than what I invested from my probably kindergarten to my master's, all combined together.
Wow.
Probably 10 times that I've invested in myself in the last 4 years, either by hiring a mindset coach, I have a business coach, I have a sales coach, I have a podcast coach, I have a multifamily coach. I'm actually writing a book. I have uh, I hired a book coach for that. And so yeah, I don't know, like one thing that you would say, it's hard to pinpoint, but I would say doing getting that mindset coaching probably paid the biggest dividends, because that helped me quit my job and let me focus on the things that I'm passionate about, and getting to spend time the way I want, as opposed to defined by someone else.
I love that. I love it so much. Tell me about a failure that you've experienced, maybe that at one time felt, quite detrimental, that maybe set you up for a later success, if that was the case.
Sure. So I have, before we got our very first deal under contract, syndicated deal under contract, we went under many deals, under contract, but never been able to close. And one deal was 78 units in Columbia, South Carolina, where we lost $15,000. But I think those were the best $15,000 that we lost, because, it's good that we didn't do that deal. Because it would have been a disaster for us, as a first syndicated deal. But it taught us so much, right, on the things that we were not looking at before, but we started looking after we did that deal. And one example would be that initially, this is again 4 years ago, I believe, at this point, 4 or 5 years ago, uh, that we were planning on doing only half the units, like walk through, right? But when we went in first 50, right, first 50%, we found out like many of the units didn't even have stairs to go to the second level. And
Jeez.
you can imagine, of why we didn't do that deal. But at least it taught us to be very to make sure that we walk every single unit when we do acquire a deal.
So you lost your good faith deposit on that deal?
No, we did not lose that, but we had spent $15,000 on either attorney or
Mm,
inspector. So we
got it.
got a sewer company involved. We cameraed all the sewer lines. We cameraed all the supply lines. We got into these units, roofers, all of that.
Mhm.
So all that money got lost there.
Got it. Yeah. So yeah, total cost of doing business there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, can you imagine how much more there would have been lost if you would have done that deal? So definitely a great reminder for us to all conduct great due diligence on whatever acquisition or any business that you're operating. We have many listeners who are not in the real estate business. Inspect what you expect, right? If
Yes.
you believe that you're bringing something on, you need to really dig in to know for sure. And also, develop your own checklist, your own system to be able to identify those issues. And if if you made an investment towards, learning that information and you decided not to go in that direction, consider that an investment that will pay off tremendously. So I thought that was a great distinction there. Talk to me. Oh, did you have something else on that?
No, go ahead.
Talk to me about your role models, Pancham. Is there anybody that you really look up to and kind of model yourself after?
So I don't really have a role model, so to speak, but if there is one person I have to pick, I would say there is this guy called, his name is Ken McElroy.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the Rich Dad advisors. He is a syndicator and a very, very well-known syndicator. The way he runs his business and way he has managed his reputation over the last 30 years, I absolutely admire that and would love to create a business like that in 10 years from now, at least, get to that level, so to speak.
Well, you're
So
certainly on your way, and it's great to hear all the other things you're working on. It's very exciting. And with that said, I'd be curious to know, with everything that you've accomplished, including, taking that leap of faith and becoming this entrepreneur that you are, what's a goal beyond, quitting your job that you're most proud of accomplishing over the past couple of years?
I would say in last 12 months, there are four things that I'm extremely proud of that and also inspired me. One is the quitting the full-time job. Second is starting the Gold Collar Investor podcast, which getting off the ground, it's so hard to get a podcast off the ground. And it was very hard, but I'm very proud of that. And third and fourth would be that doing our biggest deal of our career, that was within last 6 months, and selling our very first syndicated deal also in last 12 months.
That's awesome.
So it's a lot of fun.
Well, you've taken it full circle now with your selling that investment or the syndication, and now you've got the bulletproof track record that you can continue to push forward. So, and with that said, as you push forward, what are you uncomfortably working towards right now? What's pushing you outside of your comfort zone now?
The one thing I would openly admit now that you've asked me that, and it's going to be my proclamation to the world, so to speak, is to become a better at public speaking.
I love that.
I feel that there is a miles to go for me to become better as a public speaker. I have not really actively started working towards it, but that's something that I do want to work on and make it better.
I love that. Well, it's the number one fear that most people have is public speaking, more than death, right? So
yeah, that's
you're certainly putting yourself into some discomfort. That's one of those high payoff sort of endeavors, and I totally understand, and I think that you definitely have the ability to do so just because of your authenticity. And I think that's a reminder for everyone: if you want to be a great speaker, just be yourself, right? Just talk about what you know about and just be you. Don't try to be someone else. Such a great plan to work towards, and I know that you'll be phenomenal in that. And so, with that said, everything that you do, I mean, how does this all kind of combine into the purpose for you, and what is the overall driving force behind what you do?
The overall driving force behind what I do is freedom of time, being able to do things at my own terms, when I want, what I want, how I want it, and all that stuff. So that's the biggest driver. But at the same time, I really want to, help people out with their, it's a passion of mine to teach. Actually, I was, before I quit my full-time job, I used to go and volunteer and teach elderly people about Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, so to speak, in libraries and all that. And I feel I want to continue on the teaching path, and that's why I started a podcast. And I really want to help people out to understand there is a world outside of W2 and the world outside of this Wall Street investments, and you can really live the life the way you want if you work towards it. So
that's awesome.
That's what it is.
So you're creating freedom for yourself as well as essentially teaching others how to create freedom for themselves.
Yeah, that
That's
would
awesome.
be.
Well, that's a worthwhile driving purpose, and so I really appreciate you sharing that. And so, with that said, I want to transition into our rapid fire section, which we call our rare air questionnaire. And the reason why we call it that is because in Elevate, we are consistently scaling the mountaintop. We scale the mountaintop and we look across the canyon, and we have another mountaintop to climb. There's always another mountaintop to scale and reach the peak of, and so that's why we call it the rare air questionnaire, because most people really give up, and we have to remind ourselves that it will be challenging. It will be, hard to breathe. It will, our feet may get numb, so to speak. And obviously I'm talking in metaphors here. But I'd be curious to know, we've talked a little bit about books. We've talked about some of the lessons that you've learned through books, but beyond the books that we've talked about so far, is there another that you would say, maybe one or two other books that have been most impactful for you in your life?
Yes, so absolutely. The second book I would say that has been really impactful is Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. So that book really helped me, when I was my last year at W2. Really, he talks about how turning professional is an event that no one forgets. Like, just for example, you will remember where you were when September 11 happened,
Hmm.
right? Just like when a person becomes pro, which is professional, and they come out of their shadow career and actually pursue what they are really passionate about, that's the day they will never forget. And he talks about the journey on how to become pro, and I felt it was very impactful.
Oh, that's great. I can't let this moment leave without saying this, because this week Kobe Bryant tragically passed away,
Right.
and this show may not come out for a couple months until after this, but I think that I'll never forget that moment as well, when I heard
Right.
about that, and it really resonates with me, because maybe there is other moments in your life that you can create that you will never forget, and hopefully they're much less tragic than that type of moment. And I definitely want to wish my condolences to his family and everyone obviously around the world who's impacted
Yeah.
there. But what a great reminder here that you can actually create these moments that you'll never forget as well. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that book is great. I would highly recommend. Easy read. Um, yeah.
That's awesome. So what's the biggest way, we've talked a lot about this throughout this show, but the biggest way beyond what we've talked about so far that you elevate your life on a daily basis?
I elevate my life. Just trying to be very truthful to myself and being not, uh, not living in my shadow career, so to speak, that Stephen Pressfield talks about. Um, really, uh, what's the word for it? Catching the bull by the horns. Like if
Hmm.
the life gets tough, face it, go
Hmm.
and do things. So that's what I'm trying to train myself. In property, in asset management, on the buildings, we come to situations which are sometimes very, very hard. But rather than thinking about why it happened to me, or just go ahead and fix it and catch the bull by the horns.
So
So
tell me a little bit more about what being truthful to yourself means.
so what that means is that, like, for example, I'll give you an example of public speaking. You know, I can actually go ahead and do public speaking. I've done that. I've even presented among 300 people, size of crowd. But I have realized that I can get better at this.
Hmm.
Right. So this is being true to yourself. Yeah, I can wing it. If someone tells me to go present at a conference where 500 people are there, can I do it? Probably. Right. Will I be scared? Maybe. Yes, I think. But would it be the best of me? No. Because I know I can improve.
Hmm.
Right. uh, so that's what I mean. Like, for anything that I'm doing in life where I know that little voice is telling me, no, you know what, this is not where it should be. You have to become better at this, and whatever that is. I gave you example of public speaking. I'm trying to get better at those things.
No, that's great. And I think there has to be such a healthy balance here
Right.
between beating yourself up and criticizing yourself to a degree where you won't take action or you just really kind of get to this overly negative state. But then having this healthy growth, like, it's like constructively criticizing yourself to say, you know what, we really have a gap here where we can improve. And then inspiring yourself and stepping into that. Earlier we talked about visualizations as an
Right.
example, and your savers acronym, as you shared with us. You're visualizing, well, what can I become, and you're stepping into that by acquiring those skills, by acquiring that identity and
Exactly.
that mindset. So I think that was really, really great.
No, that was actually amazing. The way you put it, it's even better that I visualize myself being able to be a good public speaker, and my vision, what I have, is not in sync with where I'm today. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to fill that gap. And that's what I mean by being very truthful.
So it's a good, really great reminder of for all of us to be truthful with yourself.
Yeah.
Be truthful. Don't be overly critical, but be truthful. What is it that you need to learn? What is it that who do you need to know? What skill do you need to acquire or improve on or sharpen? And it's you have to be humble in this process as well. I think that's one of the
Yes.
things that most people who really kind of embrace personal growth, they embrace learning, is that they're humble. They're admitting that they don't have every answer. They're admitting that, they're not the ultimate version of themselves yet, but they're striving to become that. They're striving to become better. So that is a really great takeaway. And I'd be curious to know, beyond that, how do you best elevate others around you?
By adding value to each and every conversation I'm in, if I can help, I would do that. And that's one. And second, being a good listener, trying to work on that too. Not that I've actually always in my W2 job, how they do year-end reviews and stuff. I've always gotten a feedback that I'm a really good listener,
Mm.
but I'm trying to become. My wife doesn't think that way though. But other than that, I'm trying to become better at that. So
You can show her your professional reports there and remind her, hey, wait a minute, what they're telling me I am. Are you sure about this? But that's really good, because the only way that you can add value is to truly listen, right?
yeah,
I love that.
exactly.
I love it. Well, Pancham, this has been a ton of fun. Tell the listeners how they can follow you and stay in touch with you.
Sure. They can reach me at p at thegoldcollarinvestor.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there, happy to connect, answer any questions.
Well, I also want to remind, or actually inform, Elevate Nation that you can actually go to the goldcollarinvestor.com/download to download the top 6 reasons to diversify out of Wall Street investments. And I
Oh,
think
yes.
that's really exciting. You have the opportunity of acquiring some knowledge there from Pancham. And, I really want to thank you for being on the show. And I want to remind Elevate Nation, at this point, knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power. So what can you do to take this information and apply it immediately? You need to go back. You need to play this show again. I would take notes. I'm sitting here taking notes. I'm circling things. I mean, I got a ton of gold nuggets of wisdom from the gold collar investor himself. So I encourage you to not only do that, but also share this and teach this to someone else, because the teacher is who learns the most. The teacher is who really anchors their own understanding. And beyond that, you've got to take massive action. And I want to thank you for listening. Pancham, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Tyler. Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
This has been a blast. And until next time, Elevate Nation, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit tylerchesser.com.